All right, everyone, it's 1 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get our conversation rolling today. Welcome. We are so excited to be back together for another of the paneled conversations in this series of social justice and anti-racism for educators. This is session number 6, Draw the Circle. All right, wider. Everyone, it's 1 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get our conversation rolling today. Welcome. We are so Sorry, there we go. She told me not to do it and I did it anyway. Real sorry. Number 6, draw the circle wider, supporting and celebrating our students who represent a diversity of cultures. Thank you for being with us. Just a quick list of expectations before we get started. This is a grassroots panel discussion that has come to be because we are educators, just like you are. We are folks just like you who are interested in the relationships that we have with our students and our colleagues and the families that are represented by our students. Today, we want to really focus on our purpose. Our purpose is that we are here to be able to understand and support and celebrate all of our students. And so from that mindset, we want to listen and learn with that positive intent. And we want to understand that we are all here from the best of intentions and that we are here to love and grow and understand here together. It is uncomfortable sometimes to learn things that are new to us, to hear about perspectives that are different from our own. And so we do want to embrace that discomfort, because when you are uncomfortable, that's when you are learning and having an opportunity to stretch and spread those wings a little bit. When we finish today, this slide will come back up. And so we'll give our participants an opportunity to capture that tiny URL. If you are an educator who is interested in using this session for professional learning credit, you need to have registered for this session through the PowerSchool website. And once you've done so, the tiny URL here is how you will fill in a survey to log your attendance so that we can award credit for you having participated today. All of this stuff will come back at the end of our session, and that will include a link to resources that have been shared. As we get started, it's so important that we have a common understanding of some of the terminology that might be used in our conversation. And so here's where we've captured some of that. We may discuss bias, which is a particular tendency, trend, inclination, feeling, or opinion, and very often that feeling can be unconscious and unidentified. Microaggressions are small, subtle, and again, often unintended acts of discrimination. Justice is the idea that something is righteous, that you're seeking equitableness and moral rightness. LGBTQIA+ is an acronym which is growing and changing all the time. It stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, and that plus standing for identities that we have not included in that acronym. Social justice is the objective of creating a fair and equal society in which each individual matters. Their rights are recognized and protected, and decisions are made in ways that are fair and honest. And those are our goals as we work together as educators to change the world. Today's moderator, we are very excited to welcome Dr. Nicolette Nalu, and I'm going to pass the baton to her so that she can get our conversation started. Thank you, Dr. Nalu.
Awesome. Thank you, Leslie. And welcome everyone, as she said, and I hope you guys are as excited as I am because we have a phenomenal panel today, and I just wanted to introduce them to you. So we have Dan Eggers, we have Ivory Sermons, and Jennifer Martinez, and they're going to be answering a bunch of questions that we have collected from a lot of the participants over the last several sessions. So hopefully you guys will enjoy it, and we are going to go ahead and jump in and get started. All right. All right. So the first question I have, and you know, once you guys answer for the first time, go ahead and tell a little bit about yourselves to start off with. Okay. So Jennifer, we're going to go with you first. All right. And what are the best ways to build positive relationships with my students' families, especially when I cannot speak their language?
Well, hi, I'm Jennifer Martinez. I've been in education for about 18 years. I've worked in rural, urban, and suburban settings, and my family is a multicultural family. So, what we're talking about today is really important to us and it has affected us as well. So, when we have students that come in, or families that come in that do not speak English, our body language says so much. It says so much about our intent and our friendliness and our welcomeness that we're showing to them with our body language. So even though they might not speak our same language, they can see that acceptance right away. I think it's really important to speak in, don't be rushed when we're speaking, but at the same time, speak at a normal, speed. Watch your vocabulary and figurative language and slang. As a new learner for a new language, those things are really hard to grasp. So when you're speaking, speak clearly on that as well. Don't scream though. I don't know why. This happens all the time. I've had parents come to me and send me text messages just like, this teacher screams all the time. And for some reason, we think people are understanding us better when we're louder, and that's not the case. They're not hard of hearing. They're just learning a new language. So be careful of that. Really think about when we're pronunciating their names. Names are so important to us as identity. If they have two last names, those two last names are just as important. So make sure we're doing that as well, because that is, their heritage. If there is something that you might not understand, ask, have that communication open. Reach out to your ELL educators at your building. There's such amazing resources. I teach fourth grade, and so I'm able to reach out to my ELL educator and ask her, about this child's history, about the family. They usually have all of these kids from kindergarten to fifth grade if you're in the elementary school setting. And they have that relationship with the kids that I might not know. So they can give me some pointers there as well. And then they can also give me more resources to help build this relationship. And another thing is really the communication that we have with parents. Anything that I'm going to send home to my parents, every parent in that classroom should be able to understand what I'm writing. So if I have a student in my class that speaks Swahili, then I have got to find a way to translate that. And our schools have different ways of doing that. So you might have a person that's in your district that you could have an in-person translator or interpreter that can come in your IEP meetings, come to meet the teacher nights, if you're having a parent conference. When we're looking at the fall and how we're going to be carrying on school, it might be virtual. So they can come in and sit in Zoom meetings and help us with that as well. If not, a lot of schools might have over the phone interpreters. I know a lot of public relations have this as well. So you can use it by phone, you speaking in English, and then the interpreter will interpret for you. So great thing for parent-teacher conferences as well. If you do not have any of those resources, there's still things available. So Google Translate is huge. I always say if you're using Google Translate, make sure to stay away from that slang and figurative language and idioms. Make sure you're clear and precise when you're whatever you're writing. You can just copy and paste that into Google Translate. And they have languages I've never heard of. So it's a great resource for us to use as teachers that we didn't have, 10 years ago. And then on top of that, YouTube has great, amazing resources with their subtitles. So if I want to empower, not only build a relationship with my families and these students, but to empower these parents as well, if I'm doing something educational and I'm doing, we're learning a new unit in reading, or we're doing a new math concept, for me to record a video of that, upload it to YouTube, and then you have all those different subtitles that can translate for these families. So they're getting, not only being welcome, but empowered in their children's education and not feeling separate from that. Also, when we're looking at parents as a whole and building relationships, a lot of times people will come in and they're working parents, and this applies to everyone. And I think as teachers, it's hard for us because we do sacrifice so much and our time is so important. We want to be done at 3:30, 4 o'clock and done. We've worked our behinds off. But I think it's really important for us to make it a priority to have relationships with these parents. So if you're doing a student-led conference, or having a parent-teacher conference, be open to meet with them in the evenings. Be open to meet with them when it might not be convenient to you, because these parents care. It's not about ability sometimes. It's about, not about want, it's about ability. Like if I'm working to support my family, if I'm a single mom and I cannot miss a day of work, it's not because I care about my children less, it's just that I cannot be there. So really, open yourself to say, hey, maybe once a week or once a month, I'm going to be open later in the day or stay later at the school so I can communicate with these parents easier. And then for more resources, there is one website, and I'm going to say it so it's easier to find: Color in Colorado. In Spanish, I've always said Colorín Colorado, and it's .org. And it has a great resource to help connect with these ELL families and to help you build these relationships in this community where you might feel that disconnect. But it's easier than we think it can be. It can be overwhelming at first, but it's a lot easier than we think.
Yeah, I love everything that you said, Jennifer. I think you nailed it perfectly from every aspect. And I think the bottom line is showing the parents that you respect them and the funds of knowledge that they can actually bring to school with their children. And, you may think that you're not very strong in mathematics or whatnot, but a lot of Latinx families, they do a lot of mathematics at home when they're cooking or things like that. And that's part of it. So I love how you just answered that. But it comes down to the respect that you have for who they are and their culture and every part of them. So I really love that. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, Miss Ivory, you are next. So I will read your question and then go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself afterwards. All right. How can we address global holidays or celebrations inclusively? And then what are some worries about emphasis or de-emphasis on Eurocentric Christian religious holidays?
Well, my name's Ivory. I've been teaching, I think, 11, going on 12 years. I just really love working with mostly teenage students. I've always taught high school. So about 8th grade is kind of my limit. Younger students are a little bit more difficult. My husband is an elementary school teacher, so we kind of have that, covered across those bases. But just as far as the question goes, one thing I always tell teachers is that don't necessarily worry about one particular way to be inclusive. Really set the groundwork for your classroom in general to be inclusive. And when you're doing that, it really assists with when holidays and things like that come up. So I teach world history. And because I teach world history, it really makes it easier for me because I am bringing in a lot of different cultures and identities inside the classroom because that's what my class is supposed to be anyway. Also, as teachers, if we're doing the work within ourselves to kind of not emphasize so much on Eurocentric identities and roles and behaviors, then when you get to holidays, it is much easier. So you're not trying to be inclusive. Your classroom is already inclusive. You've already had conversations with students about their religious beliefs. You've already had conversations with them about what they celebrate and what they don't celebrate and when they celebrate it. And so it just makes it just natural and easy to happen. It just becomes a part of what happens in the classroom. It's not just, I'm trying to do this because this is what I think is the right thing to do. It becomes the identity of the room that we are a family. We have all these different parts and different, roles. We all look different. We all celebrate things differently. And so even if you want to talk about Christmas, it's not an issue because the students already know you've already talked about Hanukkah, 3 days ago. So, you have this kind of sharing opportunity in the classroom, which is much more rich than just doing it because to check off something on a box.
I love that. Air high five. That was perfectly stated. And I know in not the last week, but the week before, whenever Jennifer and I were both on a panel, I know something that came up when we were talking about that you only celebrate Black History Month in February, and you only celebrate Dia de los Muertos whenever it's that time. Don't talk about anything else unless it's that time. So I love how you just said, just make it a normal thing, like include everything. And it's more of a norm as opposed to something that's just not emphasized throughout.
Mhm.
So I love that.
And I love that too, because the kids, when you build that relationship and you build that family in your classroom, they'll come to you and talk to you about these things. So you don't have to look them out as a teacher and say, oh, what am I going to teach next? Or how am I going to tie this in? The kids will be more open just to participate in it themselves when they feel safe in that safe environment.
Yes.
I love it. Awesome. All right. Thank you. Okay, Dan, get ready. Here we go. So, what are ways that we can make the classroom more comfortable for LGBTQIA plus students? So tell us a little bit about yourself and then go ahead and answer that.
Of course. Hi, I'm Dan. I am a student. I just graduated from Altamont, and I'm about to go into college. I'm super excited. I'm a member of the LGBT community. I'm both transgender and gay. And for those people that don't know what that means, it means I was assigned female at birth, but that was not the correct distinction for me. I'm actually male. And so I transitioned to into my true self a couple years ago. And being also gay, I'm also like attracted to other men. But in order to make the classroom more inclusive, going back to what Ivory said earlier about like including that throughout in the curriculum, I think it is also very important to include queer identities and queer history in the classroom as well, because it's something that is typically omitted. Even though it has been prevalent in all histories, in all cultures, forever. In the resources that we have included for after this, that I included some awesome resources. And one of the things that I included was a map of gender diverse cultures. I think that's something really important and really interesting to explore. So just include our stories in our history, our literature, because when we are omitted from our education, it feels like either we don't exist or we shouldn't exist. And even though I know that sometimes, especially in Alabama, there can be a little controversy over teaching these subjects, but it is very, very important for children growing up to be able to see themselves represented in their education in order to get that full sense of self and full, and also just for the students who aren't LGBT in the classroom to be able to see those things and then not be afraid of them. Is also so important. And then other ways to make the classroom more friendly for LGBT students is not separating by gender, because that can put transgender students, whether they have a binary or non-binary gender, binary being male and female, and non-binary being a gender that doesn't align with those two things. A student that is non-binary is going to have a difficult time because they don't know which side to pick. And then a student that is transgender but isn't out yet is going to have a difficult time as well, because they're having to struggle internally with, do I say something now, or do I just like go to with what people perceive me as? And then other great things to do is when you are first introducing yourself at the beginning of the year, don't read off the roster, because it can put students with different names than what is like their legal name in a difficult position, and it might out them to their fellow students. And so have the students introduce themselves. Also introduce yourself as the teacher with your pronouns, so that you can normalize that as well. And then so that you don't also put other students on the spot, have them, like when you have like that get to know you like souvenir, like not souvenir, that survey that some teachers have at the beginning of the year, also add like, do you have pronouns that I should use for you? So, and also when we have subs, because I know that this is something that has caused a lot of stress for transgender diverse students, when you have a sub, also make sure that they're aware of the same procedures so they don't read off the roster and accidentally dead name a student. And then other wonderful things to do is just stay away from generalizing statements, which is, I feel like, just an overall for all identities, whether that's an LGBT identity or not. Just don't make statements that assume something about someone's attraction. So like I've heard teachers be like, oh, ladies, when you get a husband, then and it's not every lady is going to get a husband. Not every lady wants to have a husband. Or don't make assumptions about what body parts a student might have, because sometimes it might not be what you assume that it would be. And then just also gender roles in the classroom. Like, not only are they limiting to queer students, but they are also limiting to cis students and straight students, because they put an expectation on someone that is limiting to that student, whether or not they have a queer identity. So those are some of my suggestions. I hope that was helpful. Yeah.
And I'm going to put a little bit more into, because I was talking with another friend of ours as well. And, there's things that we can do as teachers, and then there's things that we need our administration help for as well. So when we're looking as teachers too, just as he said with gender roles, I've done that so many times. And not as in jobs, but as in, okay, we're going to separate the class into two. It's a quick, easy thing that we've done. And I've something I experienced in elementary school too, but we've got to really be mindful of that. Or just like, especially in elementary school where we have bathroom passes, and making it a gender neutral bathroom pass, so we don't have to worry about that. And then also just really keeping an eye out for bullying. And I know this is with anything that we're looking at, and watching those student peer interactions, listening, with a mindful ear of what's going on in the classroom to stop and squash any bullying you might see. And then looking at administrative too, let's look at dress codes and really keep an eye on that, so that we're not doing gender specific, roles on that. And especially too in the 5th and 6th grade years, when we're doing those puberty talks, and letting, students opt out of that if needed, would be another suggestion.
I would also say on the teacher end, don't be afraid of asking questions or showing interest that you don't know, or that you have questions, because I know from my personal experience, just being open to students that are transitioning in the middle of the school year and saying, what do you want from me? How can I assist? What best practices would you like? It really empowers the student to understand that they have you as an advocate in the classroom as they're going through something that is difficult in just a high school setting. It's just saying, hey, I'm your advocate. That's what I'm here to do. I think sometimes we always feel like we have to know, or we have to have like all of the information, and sometimes you just won't, and that's okay. And so making sure your students have that kind of level of just they know that you're going to come and be honest with them, to me has gone just a long way in just being honest.
And going to something that Jennifer said reminded me, but as far as like biology, when we're talking about, when we're in like the biology classroom, or when we're talking about sex ed and puberty, it's also important to also talk about the fact that gender itself, like, biology itself and sex as a biological concept is a fluid structure. It's not binary. Be that with hormones or chromosomes or genitalia, there are 1 in 100 children are born intersex, which means they have a combination of sex characteristics, be that a combination of chromosomes and genitalia, or a combination of genitalia, or chromosomes like XXY or XXX or XXYY. There is so much in biology that is not binary that we should also discuss, because it also helps give a biological basis and a biological understanding of why we have so many queer identities.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I love how everybody just kind of jumped in on that. That was awesome. And, even more so, I was thinking so much, we were talking about the students and we were talking about the administrative support, but I think a lot of times we also have to think about, which some of you guys mentioned, like the parents, right? So I may have 2 moms, or I may have 2 dads, and that could be very uncomfortable for students as well. So kind of thinking about that aspect. And like I said, I mentioned it in a previous panel discussion, where maybe we need to move away, and they don't have this, I don't think, in high school. I'm not a high school educator, but the father and daughter dance, and thinking about things like that, or donuts with dad, or, things like that. I know that that those things happen, but are we thinking about the students and truly making it a comfortable setting and whole environment for them at the whole school level? So I really appreciate all the things that you guys said. That's some great information. Okay, so Jennifer, multicultural families. So a question for those who might have a married or adopted family that kind of raises their eyebrows. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, I had to throw that question back and forth because we are a multicultural family. And I think looking at it, you've got to look at the struggles that they go through. And I'm used to those struggles, and it's just part of who we are. So I was like, we have to throw this back. I have to get some ideas. When me and my husband we've been together for about 20 years. We've been married for 16. And, the struggles we faced were inside of our family at first. No one supported me and my husband getting married. We got married at the courthouse, and a lot of people that I thought I had as friends, and people's biases came out really quickly. And it was a changing time. It was a really, we got married in our early 20s, and it was a difficult time, knowing, where do we stand? Who do we have to support us, around us, fitting in different circles was a hard thing as well. And now as we go, I feel like we have found our own, and we have found our place in community. And I think it's a lot easier now than it was when we first got together. And I think that's a good thing. But I think there's also a lot of struggles because you're looking at, your kids. My son wonders, am I American enough? Am I Mexican enough? And finding that community for himself is a struggle. And, within the classroom, I think just encouraging that diversity. What can we do to support these families that are going through that? Mirror that in our classroom, that we're acceptive of this, that we celebrate diversity, that we encourage that in our classroom to see the differences. And I think as a parent too, if you're concerned about that, to go to your teachers and say, hey, this might cause some concern. My husband's Black and I'm white, or I'm white, my husband's Black. Or, we're half Korean family, or there might be some different religious things that are at our house that might be different. Or I have a wife instead of a husband, and talking to the educator, letting them know this is where my child has come through. This is some of their struggles, and having that communication open. And, that's at the elementary school level. As you grow older, I think kids take responsibilities in their own sometimes to speak up for themselves and speak their concerns. When they're younger, they might not. But I think, you just have to be true. You think it's going to be a one and done, and you'll tell somebody that you've been close to or family members about, different things that are said, biased towards Mexicans. And you would think they're never going to say anything like that to me again, but they will, and people will. And it's just being, standing up and saying what you believe in, and just being consistent with that, and doing it in a loving nature. Because even though it's not my responsibility to teach them to accept differences, I could be that change with my attitude and my love towards them. That could be the change for them. So even though it's not really my responsibility, it's my privilege. I feel like it in some areas that maybe, this could be a changing fact for them to look back at their biases.
Yeah, I love what you said, Jennifer, and also having coming from a multicultural family. My dad being Middle Eastern and my mom is from the Netherlands. She's Dutch. Those two cultures could not be more opposite than I don't even know what. And my dad is the oldest of 7, and my mom is the oldest of 6. So they both come from very big families. But when my dad was telling his mom about my mom, I met this lady on an airplane. We were both coming to Detroit from Germany, which that's a whole other story. But he was telling her about my mom, and so she's not Arabic like us. She's not. Okay. So trying to get to know her and everything, and they're the best thing. She's the best thing that has happened to my dad. And then because now they have 3 fabulous children, my brother and sister and I. And but it was very difficult and just very different in the beginning, because most of his other siblings did marry someone else who is Middle Eastern that spoke that same dialect. So you have some adjustments to make in the household. And then thinking about us as children, we were a little bit darker than some of the other students. I am not nearly as dark as some of my cousins whose both parents are Middle Eastern. And then that Dutch side, my sister is more of like the blonde hair, and my brother and I are dark hair. But there are a lot of other struggles that you do have when you have that mixed, like multicultural family. So I think everything that you said, Jennifer, I totally agree with and can internalize. You know, we went through several of those things. The first question I get a lot of times, especially maybe in the summer, are you mixed? Well, yes, I am. There are a lot of mixes in me. I have a lot of mixes, but it's sad that as you think about it's 2020 now, you know, these things were going on when I was in elementary school, when I was in middle school. So kind of thinking about, have times really changed that much? Are we accepting of biracial students, whatever the race is, and even thinking about the LGBTQIA plus community? Is 2020 that different from 10 years ago, 20 years ago? Thinking about that as well.
And I think too, we've always heard, you know, if you're in my age bracket, you've always heard, where are these people going to belong? Where are they going to belong? What privilege do we have to say, oh, they belong in my classroom? They belong with us. They have worth. And I think it's so important to us as I'm going to cry about it. I'm sorry. We have so much privilege for us in our classrooms, and we have such a platform to reach these families in these situations that we can encourage that diversity. Yes, you will have struggles, but look at the diversity, and, you know, like you've got all this language that you have all this different culture and all this different heritage that you have. And yes, there's struggles, and yes, sometimes you don't know where you belong, but you are worth something. And us as teachers to encourage that in the classroom. That's why I'm so passionate about it, because every child in your classroom has a spot, and every child has worth, and they should feel that when they're in your classroom.
I love it. And just to kind of close this out, going back to something Ivory said, when I taught different grades in elementary school, around the Christmas break, that winter break holidays, my parents would come in and my dad would write in Arabic. I don't know how to write in Arabic. My dad would write the numbers 0 through 10 on the board. And he would teach my kids how to count to 10 in Arabic. And they just thought it was the coolest thing. And then we also did it in German, and we wrote out the words, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 through 10 in German. And then the same thing in Dutch. And it was just so cool. Like, they absolutely loved it. And then I had a student in my class who was from Mexico, and he taught the kids how to speak say certain words in Spanish. But just having that inclusive classroom makes the parents feel like, okay, my kid is in really good hands. So I love how, everyone just kind of brought their own perspective to that. Okay, so Ivory, I've got you up next. So what are some ways to deal with racism and microaggression in the classroom and throughout the school environment? So thinking about it as a teacher, and specifically as a Black educator in a predominantly white school, how would you answer that?
So this, I looked at this question and kind of added some stuff, because there's kind of two places. If you belong to, I don't want to say a subcategory, but the majority of what is considered normalized or normal. If you're outside of that, you have, as a teacher, you have the microaggressions that occur in your classroom that you are responsible for kind of squashing and taking care of. But also you have to experience microaggressions as a other, or someone that's different, just doing your job with other coworkers. And sometimes it can just be a bit exhausting, because you are dealing with and trying to maintain a level of equity in your room. And then you step outside of your room to talk to a neighbor or someone down the hallway, and you're like, oh my gosh, not again. So I love that question for that, because it really is in two places that you're going to have to address it. And it's tough, because the way microaggressions work is that they're not obvious. they are a part of our culture so much, in the fact that people, they're so normal. Like that's just the way people talk. That's just the way most people think everyone should be thinking. And so really to point it out, you are putting yourself in a place of kind of putting a spotlight on yourself and a spotlight on the situation. And so as a teacher, it's easier for me to do it in the classroom because I already know I'm the person that has to create equity for everyone in the room. So it's without question, it's easy. In my expectations and classroom rules, there's something about respect and respecting everyone in the room. So that's an easy fix. Like you explain what the microaggression is, you explain why it does not show equity and respect, and you can move on. Like that is so easy. Now, when it comes to you as an individual, as the adult, and you're at work, it's a bit different. It's just not the same. I've always experienced that. For me, it's a little bit different for myself. So this is my kind of philosophy, and it may sound silly, but this just is how I've been able to get through this. And I call it my sleep philosophy. And if something is said or something is happening and it's going to cause me to lose sleep, meaning I am not going to be able to have like peace in my mind, in my heart once I leave. Like it won't be, you said it, that's a little ignorant, problematic, and I can move on. But it's something that I'm like, nope, I can't rest on this. This is not okay. I'm going to say something. Like without question, it's not a debate. Like I have already set that line in my mind, in my heart, that's my line. If you're going to cause me to lose sleep, you're going to cause me to lose peace, I'm saying something. And with that, you have to already decide that you don't know what the result of putting that spotlight is going to be. For just to give an example, I've had microaggressions with my hair. So when I first was working, I had a relaxer in my hair, so my hair was straight. And then I left for 2 years to teach at another school. And when I came back, my hair was natural, so it was curly. And then I had cut it, and it was really short. And so it was just, I really felt like a zoo exhibit. Like people would just come and like pull curls. Like, oh my gosh, I just love it. I was like leaning over one time to sign something, and someone was like a whole hand in my hair. And I was like, what is happening? Is this really a thing? I've had people, the first time I remember like being so nervous about getting or having extensions because I've heard people say different things about young ladies at our school that have extensions. And I was like, okay, am I no longer going to be a safe Black because I'm going to wear extensions? And I've heard what they've said about other Black girls at the school when they wear extensions. And I'm an adult, like I'm a grown up person, and I'm thinking through all of these things. And so it can be exhausting, but you have to set a line. When it comes to microaggressions, you have to be able to say, this is a no, and again, as a teacher, it's weird because in the room, without question, like it's not even a thought. Like I don't even consider what I'm going to say, how I'm going to say it, what I'm going to say. But when it is on you, I think I'll just give one example. I had a coworker. He no longer works in my school. Do not make my school look bad. He no longer works there. But we were having a conversation, and we had just both came in at the same time. It was when I was returning back to my school, and he was a first-year teacher, but he was much older. And we were working. It was both our off periods, and he says, "Hey, you're really classy for a Black woman." And I was just like, what? And I don't know why I had a peace of mind to just stay calm, but I just questioned. I was like, what does that mean? And he immediately thought it was like he was complimenting me. He was saying something nice. And I had to sit and explain that was not nice. It is very problematic. Here's why it's problematic. And the big reason why a lot of people do not speak out against microaggressions is because it's exhausting. Like it is tiring to have to prove your worth and your humanity and that you are worth respect for something so small. When you just want to go about your day, you just want to go eat lunch, or you just want to go sign your paperwork, or you just want to go do your normal activities of the day. You don't want to have to stop and have a lecture about equity and diversity in the middle of just existing in the world. And so that's why you have to have you gotta have to have your mind made up that, okay, this is the one, these are the things, like, this is not okay, I have to say something. Because if not, it'll wear you out, more than anything else.
Oh, sorry. One of the things that I think about when it comes to microaggressions, and the way that I've kind of talked to other people about it is, and when sometimes when people point out a microaggression, people will get defensive, instead of saying, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize. Thank you so much." But the way that I look at it is, do you want a friend that if you have like a piece of spinach stuck in your teeth, do you want a friend that's going to point it out and say, hey, you have some spinach stuck in your teeth, so that you can take it out and then not look stupid for the rest of the day? Or do you want a friend that will just like let you carry on and continue to have that piece of spinach, and look stupid for the rest of that day? And so like when it comes to if someone says something ignorant, or it's something that wasn't, that even if they didn't intend for it to be said that way, and it's important for allies who aren't with that specific identity to speak up as well, because as Irie said, it is exhausting when someone says, oh wait, like, but you're like actually so chill, like you're not like the other trans people, like you're like not crazy, like you're so chill. And I'm like, but thank you, but yeah, but like so for me, like it's easier for me to stand up for if someone said something like Ivory said to one of my friends, it's easier for me as someone who's not affected by that comment to stand up for them than the person who is affected by that comment. Mm-hmm. And it is not only helping that one person, it's also helping the person who said that thing, because they probably didn't mean for that to come across the way that it did. And you're helping that person learn and grow. And also, yeah, again, if you are corrected, because I know I've been corrected, and just instead of getting defensive and being like, oh, well, I'm not racist, saying, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. Thank you so much for letting me do that so that I don't do that again. As one of the ways that has been really helpful for my personal growth, and just for thinking about how to help the people around me. Yeah.
I love it. That's great. I have nothing to add to that, because you guys that was phenomenal. And thank goodness my I was on mute when you were talking, Dan, because there were several times I just burst out laughing, like when you've got that spinach stuck in your teeth and you want somebody to tell you, and I just blurted out laughing. I was like, yes. And I do think that people do get defensive, and it's, don't be defensive. Why are you being defensive? Let's talk about this, right? So I love that. That was fabulous.
I would say one reason why a lot of people sometimes get defensive, especially when you're having these tough conversations, is because, and this is the history teacher in me, when you take a look back and you see how we really just evolved a society to work in a certain framework, when you point out even something so small as that spinach in someone's teeth, you are really breaking apart and dismantling a whole ideology that people have rested and felt comfortable with for a very long time. And so for myself, that gives me comfort when people initially push back, because I know what I'm presenting to you is something that you had no idea that you were going to be presented with today. And so, but that's really what happens, even with those microaggressions, even with something so small, you're really saying, hey, I know this thing that we've been taught and been told our entire lives is the correct way to do it. It's really not. And that's a big thing for a lot of people to have to swallow at that moment.
I love it. Ivory, when you were talking initially, I was like, has he seen Diary of a Mad Black Woman? I was like, I love that movie. I was like, has he seen that? Does he think that's just normal, like all the time? I love it. I love it. That's fabulous. Because it is so much easier to stand up for someone else than it is yourself. And unfortunately, there have been so many times that I've been at fault and I didn't stand up for somebody else. And it's because I didn't want all that on me, but we need to do that. We definitely need to do that more often, because my classroom was set up to where this is a zero bullying zone. I dare you to bully somebody in this room. It's not going to happen. You're not going to laugh at someone when they're doing the best that they can to read. You're not going to do any of that. Right. And that's the culture that the teacher has to set up. So, yeah. All right, Dan, we're coming back to you. How should we talk to younger students about LGBTQIA plus issues? And younger students, kind of define that however you want to. I know this panel is so diverse because we have a student, someone who's so excited going to college. We have someone who works in secondary. We have elementary educators as well. So everybody just kind of has their different lens that they're looking through. So define younger however you want to, but how should we talk to younger students?
Absolutely. Younger being like anyone. And at Altamont, because it's 5th through 12th, we consider younger like the 5th and 6th graders, but then like obviously with elementary schoolers as well, and even preschoolers. One of the ways that has been super helpful, well, again, just going back to integrating these topics into the classroom, however young, just making it normal for students to have books where there are two like men that are like two men having a love story, two women having a love story, having non-binary characters in your children's books, having a diverse array of different cultures and different races represented in the books that you're reading your children, and making sure that it's not done in a way that's stereotypical and like perpetuates stereotypes, but in a way that is like empowering and just shows an array of human beings. So just integrating in the books that you're reading your children, making sure that you have books that are diverse in the representations that you're showing these children. But also one of the ways that specifically talking about transgender identities, because people are like, oh, how are we going to explain this to kids? Kids have actually had probably the most understanding and the best responses out of anyone that I've talked to. And one of the ways that is really cool that I've seen people talk to younger children about like other trans people is, oh, we thought, like, because everybody understands, like, you made a mistake and now we're fixing it. Most children understand that. And so saying, we thought that this person was a boy, but we were wrong, they're actually a girl, or vice versa, or whatever the identity may be. And just saying it in a way that's not, oh, they're becoming this, that this is like, it's like transforming. No, like we were wrong. They were actually this the whole time. We just didn't know. And that's something that I just thought was so amazing. But then also, yeah, again, going back to the books and just including books that have diverse characters. I know when I was babysitting for this family, and then I came out, and after I came out, the mom had a discussion with the kids to be like, oh, hey, so Dan is Dan now, and he's going to come over, and he's still babysitting, but we're going to use he, him for him now. And the daughter was like, oh, wait, is he like George? Which is this book that they'd read when they were younger. It's this really cute children's novel about this trans girl named George, and all she wants is to like be the female lead in their play. And it's like her journey, and it's so sweet. So just integrating into the classroom and at home with your own children, like a diverse array of books that explains these identities and normalizes it so that it's not something so that we don't make it something that's extra and weird, because it's not. It's normal. Yeah.
Yeah, I love how you answered that. And it's so cute, like seeing how you got so excited about that book. I'm like, oh, he's so cute, like little high school. Like, it's just, you just got excited about it, because unfortunately it's not the norm. And I think there's so much that comes with that. Even, I can't speak, like I said, from a secondary standpoint, but there's so much pushback and so much who knows what that you can get if that happens, in an elementary setting. So Unfortunately, sometimes those are things that you have to think about. And it kind of goes back to, does the administration support you in your decision and what you're trying to do as well? Just to make all the students comfortable in the classroom, and in addition to their families as well. So I love that. That's great. Okay, so what we're going to do, we have a couple of questions. Leslie, did you want to go ahead and go with the questions, or do you think we could fit one more in?
You probably have time to do one more if you know of one that can be addressed pretty directly.
Okay, perfect. So Jennifer, let's go ahead and we're going to jump into yours. How do you address young students in the classroom about racism? So I think it just goes nicely with what Dan was just talking about. So young students in the classroom about racism, what do you tell them? What is age appropriate? Do you focus on individual races or more on individual uniqueness? And then also, in the light of the current pandemic situation and not knowing what school will look like in August or September, I'm wondering how I will teach students to love and accept all people, all types of people, even if there is even more fear of getting close to anyone.
Yeah, and I think I could probably spend an hour on this, and I'm going to get it in a really small amount of time. So I'm going to talk really quickly to get it all in. First, I know we're all nervous about the fall and what it's going to look like, and how are we going to build these relationships with these students. And I think finding a way for your class to have that student voice is so important. So whether it's them sending you emails, you building a relationship as that, doing small group through Google Meets or Zoom, or doing a flip grid so the kids can share who they are as a class together. I think building that classroom community, but also talking about how our norms are going to look different. Instead of me giving you a high five and a hug in the morning, it might be a air hug or a wave, but it doesn't mean I love you any less. So I think going over those norms, especially with younger children, because my kids feel it now, and we feel that unrest and that uneasiness, and going in the grocery store, we see it as adults and people being fearful or quick to anger. And I think it's just all the anxiety that's surrounded with us right now. And when we're talking about racism in younger groups, I think the most important thing it is to talk about it. I had read an article with my son, he's 15, when he was 5, and it was about race. And I was like, oh, my kids know this, but had we ever had a one-on-one conversation? And I sat down with my son, which is 5. We've taken him to marches. We have, had these conversations, me and my husband, but not with my son. So I sat down and asked him, I said, okay, tell me some things. And one of the questions, it was like a survey to ask your kids, well, what race are you? And my son identified as being Black. My husband's Mexican and I'm white, but my son identified as being Black because we had never had this conversation. And the only other child of color in his kindergarten class was his best friend that was Black. And his best friend knew what he was, but my son didn't. And then my son goes on to tell me that Black kids are seen as bad, and then that Black adults are bad. And I said, I felt like a failure as a mom. Like, is this something I've said or something I've done? He was like, no, I've just heard it. So I think it's very, very important for us to talk. And kids at this age, they notice the differences. Let's talk about it. Let's encourage that diversity. And they notice injustices in the classroom. If you give a kid 5 crackers and you give another kid 2 crackers, they're going to notice the difference. So what a way for us to do it. And then there's a website, and I'm going to add it in, and I'll give the article so you can read it later on. But it's by Jenny Spiegler, and she is with the or Spiegler. She's with the ADL, and she's a director of curriculum and instruction and training. And she gives a list of different things that are age appropriate for us to do in the classroom that come naturally, but bring that discussion up of diversion and encourage that acceptance and tolerance of other people.
I love it. Okay, so we've had a few questions that have come in from some of our viewers on the YouTube Live. So I'm just going to ask the first question. So Dan, this one's for you. So could you take a moment to discuss what you meant by dead name when talking about students' names?
Absolutely. Yes, dead name is a term that we use for people in the LGBT community that have taken on a new name and gotten rid of an old name that is not representative of their identity. So I had a name that I was assigned at birth, and I no longer use it. It is also no longer my legal name. It has also been legally changed. And when a person who has chosen a new name and has taken on a new name hears their dead name, especially when it's like, even if I like hear my dead name when I'm like out and about, I like, oh, like it feels kind of like you feel it in your gut, but like, especially if it's directed towards you, it really is invalidating, and it makes you feel like everything that you've done and all the things that you have worked towards have just like been taken away. And so it's really important in a class, especially in a classroom setting, not to make a student feel that way in general. But when even like when in the case when my name wasn't legally changed, if my dead name was on a roster, and someone in the sub or the teacher was reading off the roster to take roll, then that would make me very uncomfortable. And also, if I was what we call stealth in the community, which is referring to when a trans person doesn't want people to know that they're trans. They just want to be able to live their life normally. Like they just want to like be thought of as cis, which is cisgender is when you are assigned, when you identify as what you were assigned at birth. Most of the people watching are probably cis people. But because that way you just don't have to deal with all the stuff that comes with all the stigma that can come with people knowing that you're trans. So if someone is trying to be stealth so that they don't have to deal with bullying or whatever the case may be, or the safety issues that could come with people knowing that you're trans, then that can put them in a dangerous social situation if people didn't know that they were trans, and then you have to then respond to a name that is not congruent with your identity.
Yeah, you did a great job of answering that. So we'll ask one more really quick question, and then I think time will be up. So how do you deal with parents who are bullies to and about students who are LGBTQIA plus? And I think this can apply to whoever would like to speak on it. Dan, if you want to start, you are more than welcome to. But how do you deal with the parents who are the bullies?
Yeah, that's a major issue in the LGBT community, is that we do face higher risks of abuse at home, verbal abuse, physical abuse. A lot of us even face the risk of homelessness, being kicked out because we are LGBTQ. I believe that I think it's about 25% of trans people have experienced homelessness at some point in their lives, either from being kicked out. The average age to be kicked out is 13 and a half. Some of the homelessness comes also from the fact that we can be evicted from our homes because of our gender identity. We can be denied housing and employment because of our identity. But as far as one of the most important things to do as a teacher is just to be a safe space for your student, because at some point you can't change. There are some certain times when you can't change a parent, but you can be that safe adult, that safe person for that student to go to. And that is everything. Because a lot of what LGBT students also deal with is increased depression because of this rejection, increased eating disorders and suicidal tendencies because of this rejection from their family. And just having one supportive adult in their life can make so much of a difference. Also, it is very important, very, very important, if a student, I need to make sure that I talk about this before this ends, but if a student comes out to you, never by any circumstances ever go to the parents with this. Because again, it does put them in danger. It puts them at risk for abuse at home, for physical abuse at home, for mental abuse at home, and for homelessness. So always make sure that you understand the boundaries of the child with their identity, who they are open with, who they are not open with, and make sure that you do not put them in a dangerous situation. Would be my response.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Dan. And, before we close out, I just want to say, being in education for almost 17 years, 18 years, I've learned so much from you guys today and from when all the other sessions. So I really, really appreciate all the questions you guys answered. Thank you for you guys who put questions in the chat for us to answer, but thank you very, very much. I appreciate it.
This has been an outstanding conversation, and I just am so very grateful to all of you for sharing your perspectives and your stories. You are so right. It is so much easier to help and support others than it is to speak up and help and support our own selves. And so I just really thank you, and I am most grateful to you all for sharing. As you spoke, here are some of those actions that we noticed that we can follow up on. When it is needed and we have a family where communication may have a barrier because of a language difference, get an interpreter. And I did not know there was such a thing as getting someone to be an over-the-phone interpreter. That had never occurred to me, but that is brilliant. So whether they're in person or over the phone, whether you're using Google Translate or YouTube subtitles, but communicating and building relationships with the students and their families is so critical for you to be able to really have that full, deep connection with those children. And when there's a language barrier, we do want to be precise, avoiding the slang and the idioms that don't translate literally. And there really is no need to yell. That is so right. We do want to be inclusive all year long and make that our norm and not the exception. We want to be global and celebrate the fact that we are all one big family and be proud of that. We want to be sure that we as educators tell everyone's story. We want to let those students see themselves in the history that we teach and the literature that we share. We want to give students the opportunity to introduce themselves, and then to ask them, how is it that I can help? Y'all, I bet you cried like I did when our panelists said, these students, they have worth. Every single one of them belongs, and they belong with us. And we need to make sure that folks know that. We also want to use the Ivory's sleep philosophy. When something happens, is it going to keep you from sleeping? You're right, you cannot address every tiny little thing that happens. So we want to find the things where we really do need to speak up, and then we need to do it. And it is out of love when we speak to someone and show them the spinach in their teeth. We can definitely point that out and help all of our friends and colleagues and neighbors and people that we know on social media to identify when they've got that spinach in their teeth and help them find a better way. So we're going to leave this slide up. It's not a live link, you cannot click it, but if you will type that link into your browser, that is all lowercase, that's going to take you to a survey to reflect on today's conversation, to give us feedback and to do some reflecting on what we've discussed today. At the end of that, your confirmation screen is going to have a link to all of the resources that we've shared throughout the entirety of this series. Also, if you are an educator who is looking to have PowerSchool credit for your attendance here today, that survey is the way that we are able to log your attendance and award you credit through that system. So please do it. We only have one session left after today. Next week's session is cultural contexts, beliefs, values, and practices. But we do hope that the conversation will continue past our formal scheduled sessions. There are all sorts of Facebook groups and Twitter hashtags where you can follow conversation and connect with people and continue to hear new perspectives, ideas you had not considered. There are all sorts of book lists and suggested studies for kids and also for grown people. So even though the conversation here is wrapping up, we hope this is a conversation that we can continue because we know it is much needed. And this is a way that we as educators can help make this world a better place. So one more great big thank you to all of our panelists and to our participants for joining us. And we look forward to getting back together this time next week. Thank you. Goodbye.
So it's been pointed out that apparently I put the 26th instead of the 24th on the feedback form. So just the 26th is the correct one. Actually, it's my error. If your entries are timestamps, don't worry about it. As long as you will fill that out, we'll know which ones were timestamped after this session ends. So it actually really won't matter which one you mark, but we'll fix that immediately so that it won't be a problem if you want to hold tight and not fill it out quite this second. We'll get that fixed immediately. So my apologies for that, but I assure you, if you'll complete the feedback form, we will ensure that you get credit because it is timestamped. We'll know which session you attended.